So what I'm just looking for is just looking for a feel of what it was like, who you went with, and what.
Who I went with? You mean want to know girls' names too?
No, that's not who you went to school here with.
Oh.
You know, have you kept in touch with them? Have you
All right.
talked with them? What were the studios like back then? You know, did you do a lot of late hour activities, shooting? What kind of programs did you guys do back then?
Oh man.
See, just everything you can spew out, pretty much.
Wow.
So anytime you're ready.
All right.
Anywhere you want to start. I'm pretty flexible.
Are you running tape now?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Well, about a little background. I started here in 1960, immediately got sick, and went into Uncle Sam's Navy, and was in there for 5 to 6 years. Took a leave of absence, and Emerson brought me back after the service. So I came out of here after the service, and it was unique. The classrooms were small. I think we had about 15 students in each class, especially in the TV and journalism classes that I took. My thing was newscasting. I was going to be a newscaster. So I took journalism, I took theory. George Quinzel was the teacher of television. Lawrence Holcomb was the teacher for journalism. Oh, Kroger. The name Kroger comes to mind. He was the Mass Comm 101. That was the largest class we had. We had about 80 to 100 kids in that class. It took two classrooms. They'd open up at 130 Beacon. No, it wasn't 130. It was the room 126. Want me to describe the buildings?
Sure.
Okay. You walk into 130 Beacon, you went downstairs because all the offices were in the first as you walked in. The admissions office and president's office. The phone reception is still in the same area. You went downstairs, and downstairs you had the ladies and men's room is still where they're supposed to be. But next door was a small like cafeteria type thing where there was a TV set. TV set and radio speakers. We had WECB that would broadcast to there. That was the only place to broadcast. And television, that was the only set. And that's where WERS TV broadcast to. And people actually sat there, and every now and then they'd look up at the TV or listen to what was going on. Let's see. I was here about half a year, and then the next September I was in, the girl I was going with, Phyllis Oxfeld, and I were in charge, well not in charge, but we were part of the hazing committee. And one of the guys I hazed was your mentor here, so to speak, Mr. Thomas Guganik, who was also a Navy veteran. And it wasn't until halfway through hazing that I realized he was a Navy veteran and told him, you didn't have to go through this. And he said, but I wanted my beanie. I can't wait to hear his response to this. But anyway, he hated me. And we became the best of friends. In fact, we became roommates. Some of the other people I went with here, that were here when I went, Vinny DeBona. Vinny had a great singing voice. And he would sing at all the functions. And we thought for sure that he was going to become another Sinatra or Como or something like that. Funny how things change. Gary Grossman was here. Gary and I did a lot of radio and TV production together. Of course, Tom. God, some of the names. Lenny, what was Lenny's last name? Kraft? I can't remember. That comes with age, you know. But we had some good times. And the TV studio was on the second floor of 130. It was about as big as this room here. Didn't have half the equipment you have now. The control room, I think we had 3 monitors for 3 cameras, a switcher, and there was a cyclorama around because, of course, all the rooms had windows, so you needed to block out natural light. I remember George Quinzel telling us you cannot paint a scenery in the background with black paint. It had to be green. Green paint, because green showed up better in black and white television than anything else. So we used green. Everything was green. Windows were green, doors were green. It was fun. Productions were minimal. We did a lot of interview shows like this. We did some newscasts with a small type set. Basically, I'm trying to remember the name of the girl, Judy something, who went here, and she knew someone at ABC, and ABC unloaded all their black and white equipment. And we walked into the studio one day, and here were these monstrous cameras with ABC all over them. Of course, our comment was, well, we found out who got it donated. We said, well, there's an A+ for her. They'll name a building after her, which, of course, they didn't. But can you cut this for a second? Okay. When you first come to Emerson back then, and you were a broadcasting major, you had to take Mass Comm 101. That was the only thing you could take, along with your liberal arts courses. And it was funny because the liberal arts teachers, like the science teachers, the math teachers, they all knew you were there just to get a grade. I remember, well, I shouldn't say this because maybe some of these people would know, but I remember our biology teacher would say to us, look, just show up for class and you'll get a B. He knew why we're there, right? It's like a jock playing football, you take sewing so you get a grade. But anyway, I worked hard at it. There were some real tough courses. The communications courses, some of the education courses I took were tough. Because I was just out of the Navy. And my thing was I basically went where most of the women went, because I hadn't seen women in a long time where I was stationed. So I took a lot of education courses. Anyway, getting back, one of the guys I went here with was Paul Beck. And Paul at the time was, I don't know how he got the job, but he was involved with the Catholic Church. And I always looked up to him because he was the guy in center field at Fenway Park behind the camera. And I thought, boy, this is great. This is, I'm talking to someone like this. Let's see, who else went here? There was a tall guy whose father worked at WBZ. Oh, man, it's hard to bring up these names. I wish Tom would come in because I could get some names from him. I'm sure he'll remember them. Paul somebody ran the TV studio for Quinzel. Let's see.
What were Quinzel's classes like? What was his team?
Small, very small. I think 10. I took a film course with him during the summer once, and there was about 6 or 7 of us. That was interesting. He would describe what film was like, and we got to see some great classic films like Brave New World, Intolerance, and I belonged to, let's see, back in, when I was in my junior year, I joined Alpha Epsilon Rho, the National Honorary Broadcasting Fraternity. You had to have a 3.2 average in broadcasting to join. And in fact, Tom and I joined together. I became the recording secretary for the fraternity. And Jeff Greenhot was the president. George Ellard, who works at Channel 5, was in it. Wayne Smith, who works at Channel 5, was in it. In fact, I just ran into them last summer after 30 years. And the two of them have grown like, I have a picture, it looks like Mutt and Jeff. Hi, no, there's me in the middle, short. But they haven't changed that much. Well, we reminisced about the old days with A.E. Rowe and working in television, and the classes were small and the facilities. I mean, I'm sure you complain about the equipment you've got, but you've got to understand, we were lucky to have 2 monitors working at the same time. We were lucky if all the cameras were, white balance. What was white balance? If a person came out red, well, adjust something. Fix the lights. We didn't know. But we had a lot of fun. We did a lot of shows. We did shows of, I remember we did one show of all the married students. And that was interesting. We had 4 married couples that were students here at Emerson. And it was like a horseshoe type thing we'd set up. We had all 3 cameras going. And I don't think 4 of those couples are still together. Might have been the results of the show. I don't know. But let's see. What else do you want to know? The dress of the times? It was the 60s, late 60s. The dress was incredible. Most of the guys wore ties and jackets. I know I wore a tie and jacket. Even a class, oh yeah. And the young ladies, things were changing though. The girl I was going with would wear dungarees and a sweater. Some days I'd wear a sweater and dungarees, but most of the time I wore a shirt and tie and a blazer. Mini skirts came out. Whew. That was something new. Let's see. I remember one time I was working up at the radio station up on the third floor in the newsroom, and we knew that Hubert Humphrey was running for president at the time, was coming into town. He came right down Beacon Street, and all the kids stormed out of the classes and stopped his limo. Well, he thought because I don't know, first he stayed inside. Then he realized these kids were praising him. They were all, so he stepped out and waved to everybody. And of course, somebody thought enough to grab a camera and thrust it against the open window and shoot down. So we got a picture of Humphrey waving to everybody. That was wild. We had our first demonstration. All the other colleges were demonstrating. We had an advisor here named Jacobs, and she had been dismissed. And so Emerson had its first major demonstration. And a fellow named Frank, oh Lord, these names, I cannot remember these names. Frank just passed away too, I should remember it. Peter Mead was another one who was here. And Peter and I are still pretty good friends, see each other from time to time. Spalding Gray was here when I was first here. He's an actor now. But getting back to it, the classes were small. The English classes were small. The philosophy classes were small. The thing I liked about it was the classrooms had fireplaces. Didn't work, but we had fireplaces. And it was like sitting in somebody's living room with desks, little chairs and desks, with a fireplace, which was rather unique. 100 Beacon Street was the girls' dorm. Across the street, 132 Beacon was the boys' dorm. And I don't know of any other dorms. The student union is where it always was. But the bookstore keeps moving. Why do they do that? I get used to going into the bookstore. It was down below 145 Beacon. Then they moved it. And now I just find out it's at 80 Boylston Street. They'll probably move it before I get a chance to get over there to buy something. Emerson's like a small family, at least it was back then. You had, maybe 15, 20 kids at the most. In fact, that'd be a large class, except the Mass Comm class. And my history classes were held at the Charles Street Meeting House with Dr. DeCourcy Fales. He'd be up there with his microphone, and that meeting hall was chock full of people. And you could barely hear the man. And he'd be ranting and raving up there. And all we had then was a midterm and a final. That was it. So he took notes like crazy.
Was Dr. Coffey here then?
No. May have been. I don't remember. No. Could be. I'm having a tough time with names. I took a music course here, music appreciation. The man failed me. I couldn't determine one classical tune from another. I know I liked it, but and yet he always said hello to me in the hall. I thought, this man fails me and he says hello? No. But that's the type of place it was. Teachers mingled with students. The wall. I'm sure you're all familiar with the wall. The wall was the place. In between classes, everybody sat on the wall. Teachers, students, discussed philosophy, discussed broadcasting, discussed anything. We were all up on what was happening in the broadcasting world. We had I wish I could remember his name. We had a kid here. We did not broadcast rock and roll. WERS radio was classical music. To audition for WERS radio, you had to take voice and articulation. That was a prerequisite. And as a matter of fact, you had to have 18 credits in speech in order to audition and become part of on air. which was required. And I understand now they're trying to change that. I hope they don't. But, and I had a tough time with doing the composers' names. So I had a tough time getting on WERS. I finally made it, obviously. I wish I could remember this guy's name, because he came running in one day, and we had a record library at the top of 130 Beacon, way in the back, and he came running up. He said, "I want all the rock and roll we have." So we went to the library. We found all of these albums. We went down and loaded them in his car. And we said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I just convinced WBCN, who was also a classical station, to go rock and roll." I think they got a plaque up somewhere on it. So he's the one that did that. And we loaded up his car with all these albums, and he raced over there. Let's see, clothing styles, I think I talked about. You could always spot an Emerson College student. The hair was long, on the guys. The acting students. I played hockey for the first, we had a hockey. They started up an ice hockey team in my junior year. And I thought, hey, I'd learned how to skate backwards with some friends of mine. I learned how to skate forward, and I played a little hockey, so I tried it. I got on the team. I was on defense because I was one of the only ones that could skate backwards. But you should see the other people we go to play. I mean, guys, we had guys, Emerson, beards, long hair, not your typical jock. I remember sitting there and watching the expression on the other team's faces as we come out on the ice. They'd look and go, "Holy cow, what are we playing?" First year, we got killed. We didn't win one game. Second year, under Blair Richardson, we became undefeated. Do they still have an ice hockey team?
Just capped it 2 years ago.
What?
Just axed it 2 years ago.
Did they really?
Lack of interest, I guess.
Wow, I still have my varsity blazer.
Did you guys, like, ERS TV, was it an extra organization? Like right now, like ERS TV turned into EIV.
No.
So, like, did you do that kind of thing? Like, where students would do strictly their own production outside of actual TV classes?
We would be instructed on how to do it. And then you had projects to do in class. There was very little outside class because kids weren't around here. And the only monitor we had was in that little room downstairs, 130 Beacon.
Did anybody ever try to pitch to, like, the faculty and staff, can we come in on the weekends and try to do a show or something?
Some kids might have. We never did. Because, as I said, the only outlet we had was that little room, and on Saturdays there wasn't anybody there.
And you didn't tape anything? Nothing much to tape?
Not that I remember. We did tape some things, some projects we had to tape, and then George would review them and tell us what was wrong here, what we need to correct there. That was about it. But there was a lot of theory. Practicum, for practicum you had to do projects. And if I remember correctly, the taping was done in the control room. We taped in the control room. You didn't have video cameras like today. We could just throw a tape in, and that was all. The tape was running in the control room, and I think it was mostly 3/4 inch.
Still is.
Still is? Okay. Classes were small. Not many kids were really interested in it. There's some stories I won't tell. You know of one. But anyway, Phil Levy was another one that was going here when I was here. And Phil and I did a lot of work in TV together. He's over at Channel 5. He's still, it's funny, I walked into Channel 5, I think about 4 or 5, was it that long ago, 4 or 5 years ago? And he turned around 3 years ago and remembered who I was, which was strange. He also remembered a certain relationship I had with a young woman who was currently anchoring local television. But anyway, classes were small. I could see we weren't required to wear ties and jackets. It was starting to move away from that because of the 60s, the bell-bottom trousers, the drug culture coming in. Drugs were not a major problem here at Emerson at that time, although I think they were starting to. People were starting to. I remember sitting next to a kid in English class who flipped a joint on my desk. And I looked at it and I said, "Oh, that's interesting." You know, he said, "Yeah, you want it?" I said, "No, I don't think so." But anyway, it was funny. He also made the cover of Time magazine. He went to shoot a political rally downtown for us to do some still shots. He was into photography. We wanted some still shots to blow up in the background. And somehow or other there were some kids demonstrating, and so he wanted to get a clear shot of the politicians. And he went over with the kids, took his shot, put his camera down, and Time magazine took a picture of him. He made the front cover of Time magazine as today's unruly youth. I'm sure he's still got a copy of it somewhere. But Emerson was a close-knit school. And Emerson, I don't know if it's true today or not, but Emerson graduates took care of Emersonians. Howie, oh God, what was his last name? He went to work for Vinnie DeBona. And Howie had trouble producing anything. And I almost laughed when I saw his name on the credits as a producer. Maybe this is why I don't remember his name, if this is going to be shown to anybody. Stan, what was his last name? God, this is tough, you know, trying to bring up names of the past.
Sorry. I don't know. It sounds like a lot of what you did was radio, and it sounds like classes were very theory, very little hands-on. Whereas today, it's
most of the hands-on stuff we did was after class. Okay, except TV. He would teach us the theory. And then we would do projects. Like I said, we'd be in the control room, and we would do projects. But as I said, the only monitor we had was downstairs of 130. We didn't go out to radio. We went out into the dorms, and I did news on WECB.
What years were you here?
What years was I here? I got out of the service in '66. I was here from '66 to '69. I came from an area at a time that, I guess the public was just starting to learn about Vietnam, and were things I couldn't talk about. And I got on a talk show on ECB. I was a real hawk, because I was still military. Boy, I had people who wouldn't talk to me, because I still wore my pea jacket and stuff from the Navy. And I had a lot of women who were dubs who wouldn't talk to me, and guys, a lot of hate mail. We did have mailboxes. We had mailboxes downstairs at 130. That's right, open mailboxes.
For all the students?
Basically, yeah. It was a small school. The library was across the street at 130. I don't know where it is. Oh, it's down the street now, isn't it? Yeah. Our dining room was down where the library is.
It was the library, I think. The library is what we used to.
Yeah. And I remember some kids who were on a work program would hand out the food. Food wasn't the greatest, but it kept you alive, especially if you were broke. A lot of us, we had Ken's up in Copley Square we would go and eat. A lot of celebrities and a lot of movie stars and a lot of actors would hang out at Ken's. I remember one fellow coming back and said, "I just had supper with Burt Lancaster." He said, "You had?" Yeah, he sat at one end of the place and I was at the other. But Emerson was an integral part of Boston, and it was a great school.
Because you went to Emerson, did it seem like it opened any doors for you when you got out to get a job on TV or radio?
I went back down south to Louisiana, and people didn't know what Emerson was. But the fact that, I walked in to, I didn't walk in, I sent down a tape that I had made at Emerson, and I got hired to do 6 and 11 o'clock news down there on television because I made a videotape here at Emerson. And so I got hired from that. It's interesting because down there, the pay for television wasn't too great. I started to do some moonlighting at a local radio station across the lake. And they hired me at more money than the TV was. So I went to radio. But I got back up here in 1972 or 73, I'm not sure which. And Mike Levitt, Mike Levitt and I produced radio shows together on WERS radio. This guy amazed me. He knew more about Boston than anybody I could ever think of. I produced a news magazine show, and he would come on and he would sit down without any paperwork whatsoever, and he would do a 15-minute spiel round about Boston, just from his mind. And Mike and I mean, Mike I think now is down in Florida somewhere. He's been up the Boston area, Channel 56. But when I first came up here, came back up in 72, 73, I contacted Mike, and as I said, Emerson Connections. Mike got me a job writing news at the old Channel 5, WHDH, 2 days after went out on strike. So I was ready to bring my family back up from Louisiana, and I had to call him up the next night and said, I'm out of work again. But he got me in touch with WJDA in Quincy, and again, the Emerson Connection. And I don't know if it's still out there or not. I would hope it would be. But Emersonians tend to help Emersonians. That was the great thing about Emerson. If it wasn't the placement office was doing a great job, but if you would network, and everybody networked, and you had great friends. I remember Tom Gugani one time, we had Robert Q. Lewis came and spoke to A.E. Rowe. And Robert Q. was talking about voiceovers, doing voiceovers and production and stuff. And Tom looked at me and said, I'm glad I know you. I don't think he would say that today, but that's why we would network together. I remember once, this is interesting, I had a Volkswagen Beetle at the time, and I can't remember the guy's name. He was from Canada, but he came running down to me and said, you've got a car. Yeah. And he said, you're the only one in Emerson that has a car that I know in broadcasting. So he said, well, Peter Jennings is cooling his heels at Logan Airport. He's coming to talk to A.E. Rowe. I said, yeah, I know. I'm going over to listen to him. He said, no, you're not. He said, you and I got to go pick him up. I said, in a Volkswagen? You're talking about picking up Peter Jennings in a Volkswagen? Well, so we drove over there. And we picked him up. And I apologized for the car, and he didn't bother him one bit. So we drove him back, and he gave quite a talk, and afterwards we drove him back to Logan, and it was great. When I sold the car, I thought I might get more money if I put a sign, Peter Jennings sat here, but anyway, you get to meet a lot of interesting people. It was, like I said, the 60s. There was a lot going on. There was a black fraternity that started here by women. Ebony, is that still going on? Okay. That started in the 60s. What else started here in the 60s? Dr. S. Justice McKinley was the president. I had a history professor named Pierce. Boy, he knew everything about, he would take us around our class. We went to the courthouse once. That was a good trip. I don't know what else more to say. What else do you need to know?
I don't think there's a lot more.
Hair was long. The hair became long. I did not grow my hair real long. Jeff Starr was going here. Jeff Starr had a yellow MGA with a great big black star on the doors and on the hood and the back with the top down, and would drive around. Marta Rosen, I think his name was. And he was going to be a big radio star. I don't think so. I had a fellow classmate of mine is out at WEIM. He's the station manager out there. When I lived in Worcester, he spent many nights, he was working at WORC. He'd come and spend Sunday night, we'd drive in together. Jack Raymond was his name. We had a few take off and run to Canada because of the draft.
What was like? How long was the class? What was your TV
Oh,
class?
okay. Well, mass comm class would last about 45 minutes.
Even your TV production classes?
TV production classes, everything about 45 minutes, yeah. Some classes were an hour. Some classes were shorter. I used to take night classes. I took phonetics at night from 6:30 to 9:30 every Tuesday with Hollingsworth. Is he still here? Oh. My practicum teacher was from England, and I can't remember her name. Ted Phillips. Ted Phillips, what a gentleman. What a guy. That man would give me the shirt off his back. I mean, he was in charge of broadcasting. And I kept saying to myself, he doesn't have the voice for a broadcaster, but technical-wise, he could fix anything. And he would. Never in his office. No one could ever find him because he was always fixing something. I mean, he'd come into a class and he'd get down on all fours and start fixing a wire for something somewhere that was running through this classroom. You know, he disrupted the class, but nobody cared. That was Ted.
It would surprise you to find out that Paul Beck is like that now.
Paul Beck is like that? But Paul Beck doesn't. Oh well. Paul would crack up if I.
Yeah, Paul, he doesn't always. No.
Yeah, Ted. But Ted was good. Ted was fun. Serious, but fun. Is the sailing club still going on here? That's a major club at Emerson. Everybody joined the sailing club.
The dock is since rotted.
Oh, no. Boy, I'm telling you, I mean, Emerson was known for the sailing club. Everybody who was anybody. Mike Messer, who was there's a name that popped up on me. He was involved in TV production here and radio. I don't know what he's doing now. Larry Blank co-produced shows with me. I don't know what he's doing now. Gus Treewater was one of my first roommates. I have no idea what he's doing.
What was you had to do 3 TV classes, right? TV 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
What were like each year? Was there a different focus in the class?
Yeah, each year got more advanced.
I mean, like
First year was theory.
first year.
Basically theory and history and some work, you know. They'd show us we had to look at a camera, know everything about a camera. And then the next year was basically projects, and the third year was projects, advanced stuff. You know.
Did the projects have shift in focuses and stuff?
I think the third year was mostly documentaries. They wanted, you know,
Can you say that again? I'm sorry. I'm caught.
documentaries. We did a lot of documentaries. You know, half-hour type stuff that we had to do. We did a lot of talk shows. We did some newscasts the second year. I auditioned a lot of people to be hosts and anchors of newscasts. My whole thing, I was not really in the technical end of it. I wanted to be on air. You know, my ego insisted I be on air. You know, I was going to be the next Johnny Carson. Sure. You know, everybody starts small. You got to start small. Some station, you know. I remember, excuse me, being on the air at WESX in Salem. I thought, boy, I'm back. I'm, you know, had a following, the whole thing. And I remember getting a call from the manager one night. It was snowing. And he said, look, before you leave, would you shovel the driveway? And I'm saying to myself, wait a minute, I'm a personality. I don't shovel. But that's what happens at a small station. You shovel. We learned that George Quinzel told us that. You don't start off at NBC or ABC or CBS. You don't start off at a big station. You start off somewhere. And Ted Phillips said the same thing. You might be on the air for 3 hours and have to empty the ashtrays and vacuum the rug. You know, that's what happens at a small station. You are your own production. In radio, I never had a producer who would tell me what to do. I did it. I set up my own program, set up my own. Television, now that I work at Cablevision in Newburyport, I'm a producer. I host my own half-hour show there called Victory Lane about NASCAR racing. And I have a producer. And I never had a producer before, and it's great. You know, let him worry about it. When I produce radio and TV shows, I'm staying awake nights in the dorm, pulling my hair out. My God, you know, when am I going to get this done? You know, procrastination was not the greatest thing for a producer. Making phone calls. Can you come in? Can you do this? Can you do that? I used to get weird people come on my shows. You know, taxi drivers, ambulance drivers in Boston. Interesting stories. Oh boy, some of the names that come up. Rich Rapidi. Rich Rapidi was our record librarian. I have no idea what he's doing now. Randy Brooksbank was the news director for WERS Radio. And I understand he went through WBZ's management, and I think he's out in the West Coast. It's amazing to sit in front of a television set and watch the credits, which I do because I know people. And every now and then I see your name, which is nice to see.
I didn't even realize it was there.
Oh yeah, it's there. And it's great because I teach now, and it's nice to see people who I've taught getting into the business. Emerson was unique. It wasn't BU. It wasn't as big as BU. It wasn't Northeastern. When I got out of the service, I visited many colleges, some with wonderful campuses. But I chose Emerson. Emerson College with its campus of Beacon Street, dodging cars to get to classes. And I have to tell you this, we would put, back then on Beacon Street, if you parked on one side, when the meter ran out, you had to move your car. And so you could tell. People would come out, and I thank God for the girl I was going with because she'd hold my books on the wall while I ran across it. Everybody like Sebring. You ever seen Sebring when the drivers all run to their cars to get started? Well, we'd all run, and guys would get on this side of Beacon Street. We'd be on this side, and people would hold places, and we'd do a massive switch. We'd go back and forth all day long, moving our cars from one spot to the other. And it was fun. Emerson was fun. The Wall was a great place because that's where you really got to get into some deep discussions. Not about philosophy, but theory. Nobody ever did any studying on the Wall. You were too busy talking. The only time people didn't actually sit on the Wall, I think, was in winter because it was so cold and the snow would pile up on it. But you'd find a spot.
Was there any? Did you feel any competition? Did like everybody in the program feel any competition towards other schools in the area that taught broadcasting? Like, was there?
Not really. Not really. No. Not at all. Not at all. In fact, we thought we were probably the only school that did teach broadcasting at the time. We might have been. I knew BU had a radio station, but I don't think it could compare to Emerson. I'm proud of the fact that I went to Emerson. I'm proud of what Emerson is, and I hope it continues the way it is. I'm excited the fact that students of mine go here. There are some traditions that we're going on here. We've had a lot of people come out of here and go and do very, very well. Others become teachers. God, I can't think of anything else that...
Anything of anything
Oh.
about the program you can
All right.
put in, we can use and chop and B-roll or whatever. Speed.
Yeah, when I was at Emerson, the first years back in 1965, 66, broadcasting was geared to on-air, not the technical end. Very few people were in the technical end. And I was surprised that Tom Gugani got in the technical end. I was surprised Paul Beck, though he did camera work, I was very surprised that he came back. But it was mostly geared to being an on-air personality. We had journalism, we had news writing, we had newscasting, we had makeup courses, we had articulation courses to help us, speech courses to help us. We learned tricks of the trade. It was at Emerson I learned to sit on the tailcoat of my suit, of my sport coat, so it wouldn't bunch up and back, because it looked like you were, like a turtle. And so they taught us to sit on that, so we give it a nice, and film, it was basically on-air personality, teaching people to be on-air personalities. The technical people you didn't have too many of them. Had enough to run the programs, but that was about it. Everybody wanted to be an on-air personality.